Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey, Carrie, and Lee.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix. If you like us, head over to iTunes or to Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to talk about props at the table. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix. Welcome to Just One More Fix. This is James. We already did the intro already, so I guess we're just going to jump right into this one. I thought there was a couple. Do we have any announcements today?
I'm 30 now.
That is true. You did celebrate a birdie. A birdie?
She had her
Is this
birdie
golf?
yesterday.
I don't know.
I'm still under par, folks.
Hooray. That's anyway.
It's funny because now I'm thinking, is a birdie over par or under par? And I really don't know.
I think a birdie is one over par.
More importantly, I don't care to know.
I'm not a golfer.
Golf,
Sorry.
not our favorite game.
Right on. So I guess there is one announcement that I'm super stoked for, and I already told you guys, but Ken Hite announced that he is the lead developer on Vampire the Masquerade 5, 5th edition. So that's super cool because I'm a big fan of most stuff that Ken Hite does, and Knights Black Agents is really cool, and it's a vampire game, and I hope he brings the darkness of the vampires in that game to the Vampire the Masquerade, because I think it will bring back some darkness that first edition had that kind of got lost as the game progressed or whatever.
There was, in fact, so much excitement that there was like squealing and oh my God happening, and it wasn't on my part.
Yeah, I was super stoked. I'm excited for it, so I'm looking forward to Vampire the Masquerade a lot. So we'll see if it's any good. So the other thing is there's a couple cool games on Kickstarter that we've shared on our Twitter feed. One is that Sigils and Signs, which is
Cubicles. It's put out by Cubicle 7.
Right. It's where you play cultists instead of investigators. So you're the bad guys in the Lovecraft universe, and it looks pretty neat. And it's also got one of the designers that was one of the original designers of the first edition Masquerade and first edition Oblivion. So kind of a weird 7 degrees of separation for RPGs, I guess, there. But
I'm excited to see the different cult families.
It does look very cool. So check that one out. We shared it on our Twitter feed. So, or just search Signs and Sigils on
Kickstarter.
There you go. Yeah, on Kickstarter. So right on. All right. So today you heard we're going to talk about props to table, and in a tabletop sense, not in a. I know our last week we talked about LARP. Oh, I'm going to groan from our audience or whatever, but we're going to talk about it strictly in the tabletop sense and whether it adds something to the experience at the table. So do you guys think that props are cool in a tabletop sense?
Yes.
Totally.
I like having props at the table, but I do not like making them.
I may actually like making props more than I like running the game. Which makes you wonder why I don't have more props in my games, doesn't it? I really like doing it for the Dread game is how I found out, because I was, finding little clips of music, and I took a little picture and cut it up into pieces to give you guys a little puzzle.
That was a really cool thing. I didn't agree with the torn up pictures. Like, maybe we should clarify.
Was 100% inspired by Mansions of Madness, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right on. Great.
Like their painting portrait
Right.
that you have to assemble or whatever.
Great example. So what do you guys consider a prop then? Is it something that you can physically touch, or is it, background music and that kind of stuff? Or do you consider those props too?
I would.
I do.
For me, it's anything at the table that I don't have to imagine and that isn't required for actual gameplay. So dice, pencils, paper are not props. But anything that I don't have to play out in my head is definitely a prop.
Right on. I can see that, I guess.
So then if there's some kind of puzzle or something that you actually physically incorporate into the game, does it count as a prop then? Because it's serving more than just an aesthetic purpose.
To me, yes.
I think it's a
I'm
prop,
not
yeah.
just rolling a die.
Right. Unless
And
it's just...
also how you form the puzzle. So if I'm looking at a lined piece of paper that has a puzzle on it and I have to figure out what the right number is, that's one thing. If I'm looking at a picture and I have to figure out how it fits together, or something that looks like actual stone and I have to push the right button, that's more of a prop to me.
Okay.
What about like the scrolling around the edges of these Burning Wheel character sheets? Does that qualify as a
That's
prop?
part of the character sheet. You have to have that to play the game.
But you could just as easily put it on a piece of lined paper.
It's just flavor. That's not a prop.
As it turns out, a lot of games, it's not that. Like, that's a lot. Like, to keep track of all your successes and like a Burning Wheel character sheet, I would not want to do on regular paper. But so I think you're on the right track there. If it's not like part of what the bare essentials to play the game, I think you're right. Because there's a funny thing to say that like if you had a picture, that would be a prop. But if I have a computer screen that with a roll through like a slideshow of NPC pictures. Well, those are still props then, I think. Do you know what I'm saying?
I would agree.
It doesn't change anything there. So
I believe that music could be a prop too, because it puts you in the mindset. You're not having to play a certain soundtrack or a mood when you're going through a place. It's just like a movie has a soundtrack background. And some of the sound bites you can download are actual like noises from inside of like a cave, or music that you might hear when you're in the ballroom, or
1970s theme music.
Right. There's something that I like to do with some theme music, like that I just started to do more recently, I guess, is like for our 7th Sea game, I downloaded the intro music to Black Sails. And I don't think I've done it in the last session or two, but like I would key it up and it was like, hey, to kind of get people in the frame mind that we're going to start playing now, right? To kind of...
The last time we played, I put on the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack.
Yeah. Now, that is something we should probably talk about as far as soundtracks go. Like, at the time, I think I was the only one that had watched any Black Sails, so it wasn't distracting to me because... Or, like, I suppose, did you guys find it distracting because you didn't know the song? Do you know what I'm saying?
No.
Versus, like, everybody knows the... Or not everybody, I guess, but most people are familiar with the seventh... Or the... Parts of the Caribbean.
It's still not like it has words. And even then, I think for me, just volume has a lot to do with it and how exciting the game is, because we played Spirit of 77 with 1970s music playing in the background, and I didn't find that to be distracting.
Right. Well, that
or maybe at times appropriately distracting.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's a great example of a game where they incorporated soundtrack into it, because there's several Spotify lists that you can look at that are, if you just search the adventure you're looking for or search Spirit of 77, it brings them right up, which is a really cool thing that they did that I don't think any other gaming company has done anything like that at all. So, all right. So besides music then, like...
There's also audio clips. So for like your Orpheus, when you get
Radio
your,
Free Death.
Radio Free Death. When I did the Dread game, I had a small clip of a child singing a nursery rhyme, all creepy like, you know, and things like that.
Yeah, the Radio Free Death thing is very cool. It's like this, it's very big part of the game. It's a staticky, distant, voice through the radio or whatever. And when I heard it, when I downloaded it to use in a game, I was like, this is amazing. Did you guys, like, what did you guys think the first time you heard it?
I got goosebumps.
I thought it was awesome.
Right on. It was, but it's also, that is a good example of something that's built into the storyline. So it was something that was added to it. Now, I didn't make that. There was some other guy that did it, but it added a lot to the feel of the game and like the immersion of it. Do you know what I mean? And I think if I remember right, when I did it, I had you guys make it a wits alertness test, and the amount of successes you got meant the amount of times that I would play it back for you, which was kind of a cool thing. So like you really, it's like, oh my God, pay attention on, because it's this disembodied voice kind of a thing. So there's some interpretation of what was said and whatever. So I thought it was very cool. I like that one a lot, but all right, I guess we can move on to like some of the more conventional things, like some of the more tangible stuff, because I think we could sit here and talk about audio clips and music all night. The only thing I will say about it is it's better to have songs without lyrics to them, because sometimes,
most of the time,
yeah, sometimes I find like the song that I hear may not mean the same thing to me as it does to someone else. Or
I don't know. I feel like 7C would be totally appropriate to have some sea shanties in the background.
You're right, but no one like had a breakup song of a sea shanty unless we were from 1700. But I think we're all born after that.
I think it would be okay to have songs with lyrics for certain, to emphasize certain points. So as opposed to a soundtrack of all songs with, lyrics playing in the background, you have just general background music. And then you can have, during this one moment, I'm going to play this song, or like if you're doing Monster High, maybe you can really play that epic, say anything.
Monster Hearts, not Monster High.
Oh, what did I say? Monster High?
You said Monster High. That would
well, I was thinking Monster Hearts in high school.
Right. I do not want to play Monster High, the RPG.
No. Somebody out there does. But so if you're playing Monster Hearts and you have that say anything moment, John Cusack holding the boombox, and I think that could almost be a good iconic moment there.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So as far as like the more tangible stuff, are there any props that we've had in our games that really stand out in your mind?
I think we have a couple of different styles of props. So we have like those things that are around just for sort of ambiance, and then we have those things that are actually part of gameplay, and there's a pretty big difference there. Okay, so like what are some examples of ambiance stuff?
The pirate flag that we set all the stuff on for 7C.
Okay. So 7C is we have quite a few. That's something that I got super excited about because I'm a big fan of it. So we have a big Calico Jack, which is the skull with the 2 cross sabers, and that's like our play mat almost. And then we also have a sextant, a brass sextant that I have, a scroll case, and
you keep the spare dice in a treasure chest.
yeah, all of it actually stays in the treasure chest. And then I changed out. They have hero points or danger points, which is basically bennies or fate points essentially. But instead of using like regular poker chips, I got some cheap Turkish doubloons. I did it again. I got some cheap Spanish doubloons off of the internet, and we have those in place of the danger points just because that they're a little more thematic, I guess, you know.
Plus, when I fidget with them, they make a very thematic chinking sound.
Chinking sound, yes. So those, I guess,
lighting
are
is also one. You
What
can
is-
also do lighting. So if you're playing in a horror game, you could turn off
Dim the
lights and
lights.
just do candling.
there's actually a really cool game that I'm planning to get here soon once we finish up some of the other games that we have, that's called 10 Candles, that uses 10 candles on the table and you light them, and as the game progresses you blow the candles out, and it looks really, really cool and good. But it's like builds that idea right into the game itself. So besides, I guess, ambiance clues, besides the ambiance props, are there any that stick out in your mind as like that were really cool, that were actual more gameplay props?
Well, when we think about gameplay props at the tabletop, I always think of Kurt's games because he comes with all his NPCs. He has actual pictures printed out of them so you can see and kind of put a face with what you're thinking of. And maps are, of course, a big one too.
I love seeing them on the table.
Yeah.
Because
Or
not only
taped to the wall.
Or both.
Right.
Rolled up.
because that's both an ambiance and
Yeah, well, maps are something that kind of harkens back to like first and second edition D&D, because when you bought the box sets, they always came with these giant maps, like these 8-fold maps, you know, that were really cool. And we busted out my Dragonlance one from the second edition box set. It's frayed at the edges from being folded and unfolded so much, but it does add a lot. You're looking at the map and trying to figure things out and whatever. And it's
We ran a Serenity. He ran a Serenity game that we played in, and we had money. He had printed, what do they call it in the
credits.
Credits, Alliance credits. He had printed out that we actually used when
So we
buying
got
things,
paid for a job.
exchanging in gameplay.
Which was fun because I was the captain in that game, so doling out the salary to my ship crew was kind of fun because one of our players was a terrible gambler, basically. So like, made a point not to give him all of his money every time, you know, because then it was. I don't know. Did it feel more impactful when you spent your money because you had the bills in your hand?
Almost definitely.
I thought it was very cool because we had a fat stack of cash. Like, I remember got paid for a job and it was like, you know, here's this giant roll of bills. Basically, it was very
until
cool.
you don't have that fat stack anymore, and then you're like, oh no.
Yeah, it was very cool. I forgot about that one. That was actually a really good one.
And we also had schematics for the ship itself.
Oh yeah, like
Is that the
blueprints.
right word to say?
Schematics,
yeah.
But blueprints, right?
Yeah, blueprints of the layout of the ship, and then ship's papers as well.
like a title,
Yeah.
and a deed, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Are there any?
Kurt, and I guess apparently the Serenity game was a big one for props because Kurt actually also printed out some medication labels and some Blue Sun Corporation shipping labels and brought us a box that was like fully decked out, like it contained lots of vials of medication.
It's a very specific one though. It's isopurinol. Is that what it is?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It was thematically appropriate. Based on the show as well.
Right.
It was, one of the medications they talk about stealing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We've had some other ones.
It was the one they used to treat the sickness on the planet that they go to.
from the terraforming.
Yeah.
We've had some other ones. We've had I've used the puzzle box that we have before. That's a Rubik's Cube that I printed the faces for the Hellraiser puzzle box and put them on there. And we've used that before. We've got several props that we've had from haunted houses that we've done that have come into play a few times. I don't know. Are there any other big ones that you guys can think of that were memorable?
For ambiance?
No, just for gameplay props.
My favorites are always letters. I like reading letters instead of just hearing them, and I like being able to go back and read them.
Right. That's something I did for the 7th Sea game. Is there's a poem/letter puzzle kind of a thing that you guys have received, and it was written on the
Parchment paper,
and I sealed it. I actually Lacey got me sealing wax and a signet sealer
because I love props.
thing. Yeah. So, and was that a cool thing? And it was actually written with a calligraphy pen and everything else. So it was more period, I guess, than a regular type printed piece of paper.
I thought it was awesome.
Right on.
And I know you guys had talked about LARP, but even there, some people use props more than others. And so like Kurt had written me a letter and actually given me an envelope full of printed money for that as well.
Right.
Like on the down low.
Right. Yeah, that was a cool kind of a thing. Something else like the Dracula dossier I'm going to show you guys here because it's pretty awesome and I'm prepping for this game. When we talked, what brought this to mind was props, right? But in that it comes, they have the Harker papers and it comes with business cards and loads and loads of letters and articles and all this kind of stuff that come with it. There's some pictures that come with it and telegram transcriptions, like because the game takes place across a pretty big span of time. So that's what kind of really got me thinking about this, because I know I'm going to rave about it for quite a while because we're getting ready to start the game, but it's so well put together and there's just so much. And what's neat is there's different information to pull out of each of these letters and things. And it might be a different discussion about how you bury clues and props and whatever, and whether you just give the information away or you just move on, because part of the problem with getting hung up on props is if there's a riddle in there and the players can't actually solve it, then you're stuck, right? Now, this is handled in gumshoe systems by you just spend the points and you can get the information, which is something that's interesting because in there it talks about you can either spend the investigative points to get the clue, or if you can just figure it out, then you get it for free, right? Which is kind of a cool, it does encourage you to actually do some investigation and look in yourself and that kind of a thing. So I guess, have you ever found it frustrating when there are props with clues hidden in them that you can't figure out? Like you get hung up on what, like on what the prop or the clue is inside the prop.
But I still enjoyed it in the Arkham style game that we played.
Armitage Files. There was a lot of information. I agree.
And sometimes it was really hard sorting relevant from irrelevant. But it kind of added to that sense of foreboding and the inability to do anything. Yeah,
that truly Lovecraftian. I will say that was part of a mistake on my part, is that there are those letters in that are structured so that there are way too many clues so that you pick which ones you want to use and don't use the rest. And I'm just a giant fan of Lovecraft, and I thought, I like it all. And I probably should have streamlined it more and made more dead ends as opposed to letting you continue to chase things. But I will say, if you run the game that way, it is truly Lovecraftian because it is hopeless. So if you're looking for, to demoralize the investigators.
Was tangible.
Sometimes I felt like I was trying to decide which horrific death I liked the most.
It was a choose your own ending.
Choose your own doom. Yeah, well, that's true.
Choose your own adventure, Cthulhu edition.
Do you want to die by Narlithotep's hand? Come with me now. Is Hexter the way you want to go?
For Haster, press 1. For Narlithotep, press 2. For Shub-Niggurath, press 3. To hear this recording in Enochian, press 4. Right on. Yeah. That one is very cool, but I did feel like there was just too much in those, but that's also partly on me because I didn't pare it down to try and point you guys in the right direction. And that is something that has really made me think about all of this stuff, because the Dracula dossier has a little bit of that in there, but it's not quite as much because it's spread out across a lot more stuff and not 10 letters. You know what I'm saying? And it's made me realize some of the mistakes that I made in that Armitage Files has changed how I'm going to do things in this Dracula dossier thing, so that any props that I give you guys, to make sure that they are immediately relevant. And if you guys get hung up on it, to either give you that information by an investigative spend, or I guess if you're playing any other non-gumshoe game, to make it a simple test to roll to see how much information I'm going to give you. And if you do that, one of the main things I guess you should say is, if they fail the test, failing still gives you the bare bones amount of information, but the degrees of success that you succeed by would mean you would get more and more than just the bare bones, because if they don't get any information, then the game doesn't move forward. Does that make sense?
Really frustrating. And it's also really frustrating when you have to share that information, but you can't let anybody know that because you don't want to ruin the experience for anybody.
What do you mean?
Well, like when you have like a really cool hint and you're like, they're going to get this, and then they don't.
Oh, on the Game Master side of it.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
And then you're like, do I give it? Do I wait it out? How long do I wait? How much do I give? If I give it, do they feel cheated?
Right. So what I found is that waiting too long can be hard, because you want them to feel like they figured it out and they get rewarded for puzzling it out. But at the same time, if you wait too long, then it becomes frustrating. And I saw all that happen both ways in the Armitage game. So I kind of transitioned, into, it's still relevant to clues, I guess, but we've kind of gone off just I guess to make
To
sure
some extent, you can use the stats of their character sheet to help them along a little bit.
how so?
Like if you're playing a D&D game and you hand them a riddle, you know, the wizard has a pretty high intelligence. If he rolls an intelligence check, give him a hint if he gets it right.
Okay, like yeah,
Or almost like more tries at it, you know, or some sort of advantage. Yeah, I agree with that because we all want to play someone exceptional. Exceptional. We all want to play someone exceptional, and maybe we're trying to be exceptional at something that we are very average at in real
Right.
life. So,
Well, the other
like
thing-
computers for me would be one. You know, like maybe you want to give me a wiring diagram, and you know I've got like an electrician genius that I'm playing, but in real life I'm kind of like red
Well,
wire,
I like
blue
the
wire.
idea, like in the riddle case, I like the idea of more guesses because if it's only one guess, it's very critical, right? Like if I get this wrong, we're hosed, right? But if you make it to where they get more guesses, it takes some of the pressure off, but it also can, I guess, lead to more discussion. Like I guess I get the riddle wrong. Well, that was clearly wrong. How do we think? Where do we go from here? Kind of a thing, back and forth with the other people at the table.
I really think you could even enhance something like that in game if you had like 2 or 3 props and based on how well you did would dictate which prop you received. You know, kind of like that door number 1, door number 2, door number 3 kind of thing. Like add a little bit of
Let's make a deal.
tension and gravitas to the decision.
Right on. All right. Some of the other things I've used before have been like old books. I have an old ceremonial magic book that's kind of cool that I've used in some of our mage games and some of our Cthulhu games. It fits right in there. But they're really fun and cool, and they're usually pretty cheap off of the internet because they're old books and not highly sought after a lot of times, I guess. So you can do wonders on Amazon by looking for used books or whatever, or your used bookstores or whatever.
Artwork is always an easy one to incorporate in things as well. You know, whether it's a famous painting that you Googled on the internet and everybody uses that photo, or if it's an actual picture that you drew beforehand, what have you.
So I guess that kind of lays out the reasons for using them. And like, it really does add to the immersion of the game when you can physically pick something up. It's part of the game world, right? But at what point do you think it goes too far and it starts to take away from the game? Is that possible?
I think maybe when your props are outshining what you actually have going on in
So
the
don't
game,
put more effort into the prop in the
then
game.
you've probably gone astray somewhere.
So no Warhammer?
What do you mean?
Like as far as using the minis, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I guess miniatures is something we didn't really talk about when we're talking about props because James has kind of this view of I only want to use the miniatures for games that are designed to incorporate the miniatures. And I have a point of view that's kind of like minis make everything better.
Well, I think it depends on if how abstracted the combat is. Now, we have used like a Fate game where in Fate, the combat space is divided up into 3 zones typically, or however many zones. And I don't mind using the minis for that because I'm in this zone, right? I'm in the bar zone, or I'm in the in-space zone or whatever.
Well, I actually ran a quick, just off-the-cuff Fate in Space game for you guys simply because we had these sci-fi minis built and on the table
Right.
already, and I was like, I want to use them for something. So
Now, I don't mind using them
we did that.
for that kind of a combat, but if it's a totally abstracted combat system, then I'm not into using the minis because they're not functional at that point. You know what I mean?
But you made 4 shelves worth of terrain. 4
Which is
shelves worth.
Really cool. I mean, we used it in the Dust
Yeah.
Adventures RPG because that goes so seamlessly from your tabletop Dust Minis game to your Dust Adventures RPG when you break down into combat, which is very cool.
Right. I don't, because like I guess it's the best example of it because I feel like in an abstracted combat thing, they're not adding to anything. They're sort of more taking away.
Yeah, but Fate is pretty. I mean, that's about as
Fate, I'll give you.
abstracted combat as you get, and still have.
But there's still
combat in the
zones.
game.
There's still zones that are relevant to where
right,
you're at.
and everything else is completely abstracted.
Right. No, what I'm saying is in Fate.
And the zones are really completely relative as well. You could be like, this house is one zone, my yard is a zone.
Right, but it's
across
relevant.
the highway is zone 3.
It's relevant to the combat though, in that like, yeah, I can't melee attack somebody in the next zone over. I have to move to that zone, right? So like the representation of where you are is important. But like if it's in like say Dogs in the Vineyard, the combat space doesn't work that way. It's more narrative, right? So there's no like I'm in this space. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's not.
But I still think the props are beneficial. They're just less functional at that point. So it's still cool to have a rundown tavern and a couple of cowboys standing in the street.
Right.
Even if, the fact that you're 50 paces away versus 10 paces away is completely irrelevant to the story. Even
Okay.
if we narrate the whole thing, just the idea of knocking miniatures over is fun. I mean,
Ooh, story.
Good times were had by all.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. Maybe we'll break out the minis more because I have another problem with gaming miniatures, but so maybe we'll bust them out some more. I don't know. Besides miniatures, then I guess we kind of talked about, like if that can be too distracting, right? Because I know when I felt like when we did the biggest tabletop miniatures thing that we ever have used here at our table was that Dust Adventures, and I had, I don't even know, like 6 buildings. One of them was 3 stories tall, and rubble and sandbags and all kinds of nonsense, right? With minis all over and tanks and walkers and troops. And I didn't feel like that took away from the game.
I am, in fact, still looking forward to going into London to that museum we need to go see.
But so you guys would agree that didn't take away from that gaming experience, right?
Not at all.
But that was very much combat focused in that sense, right?
Now, I do think if you were playing just a one-night session and you had, 2 or 3 of those things planned, then it would be to the point where it was interfering, because then you have the setup of that, the teardown of it, the setup of scene 2, the teardown of scene 2. Well,
in that case, in that game, I knew that combat was coming, and it was kind of an inevitability because you guys had already made plans and headed towards it, basically. And I had that entire battlefield all set up and ready to go with the bad guys in place where they needed to be and all that kind of stuff, because it was a huge undertaking to get it set up. There's a lot of pieces to get out, and no one wants to get bogged down waiting for that to be set up or whatever.
And that's kind of the problem we always had with the original Mansions of Madness game before they redid it with the app built in, is that just the setup
does take a while. I agree.
This is 30 minutes we could have spent playing the game.
I agree. So besides the minis then, are there any times where you felt like props the table took away from the game besides minis? And
I feel like if you tried to make a ham-fisted attempt at some olfactory props, that would probably be too much.
Well, they do have that
about smells, and that was going to come up.
Well, there's that company that we went to the haunted house, the Midwest Haunted Convention.
Basically scent beads.
Yeah,
but that was for thematically for like haunted houses.
Yeah, but they had them that were like dead rat. That was like I can't smell. And it smelled terrible. That's how bad it smelled. I could smell it. Okay. And I was like, wow, that is bad.
Yeah. I think if you're, betting on one scene where you're supposed to have rotting corpses, maybe you shouldn't try to simulate that smell. But maybe, if you're out in the woods camping, if you want to have, like a smoky kind of scent, I think that would be okay. Or like some sort of appropriate candle. They come in every scent under the sun.
Right. Hooray, Yankee Candle.
I mean, if it's worth, $35 to you to buy that one big candle for the night, then you go for it.
So I can't think of one good example where things get distracting is music. And it's not we talked about lyrics and that kind of stuff being in the background, not representing the same thing, but I'm talking about more on the game master side of things. In that if you're spending more time trying to get your playlist and soundtrack right in the middle of the game, that can be very distracting and kind of taking people out of the moment, because the music is supposed to draw them in and evoke emotion. But if I'm too busy trying, nope, fast forward to, whenever, and this is the wrong track, and it's on shuffle now or whatever, that can be very distracting.
I think you could make that same argument for cell phones too, because in a lot of modern games, it's okay to have a character with computer skills, and maybe you can be Googling things and working together as a team. But there's always that urge to go back and play with the phone. Oh, it's not my turn. I don't need to pay attention. And then you're just zoned out and not really participating, which can definitely happen. I'm a guilty party. We've all been there.
All right. So what about we've got a decent amount of haunted house experience here in the room of building things and doing all kinds of stuff. So as far as creating props, which is something that I think a lot of people are scared to do because they think it's going to look like crap and they don't want to waste their time. But I would argue that almost anything that you make is going to add, unless it's like a turd on a paper plate, it's probably going to add to the game some. Do you know what I mean? So there's easy ways to age documents. So if you
probably the easiest aging agent that everybody has laying around is coffee.
Yeah, coffee or tea. So you soak the paper in it, and then if you want to dry it in the oven, you put the oven on warm at like 150 degrees, whatever the lowest setting is, and you put it in there, and it will dry it, and it ages the paper. It crinkles it up and everything else.
Burning edges is easy. Please be careful. Don't
burn your house down. Also, be very careful, because if you age the paper, and this is something that I've done, and then you let it burn and don't put it out fast enough, or the smolder wants to creep, and you're like, no, it's burning off the actual clue, so then you have to do it all over again. So, be careful with that. Just make sure you're paying attention, because you don't want to waste all your time. Something else that's fun is old flea markets to go to and look through all their junk. And it's usually pretty inexpensive, or antique shops that have cheap antique stuff in
You
it.
can find old textbooks, old yearbooks. That would be a cool prop. I mean, you can find those for like $0.25
Oh, I
anywhere
didn't
because
even think
nobody
about
wants
that.
to buy them.
But you can buy those and then, I mean, like carve up somebody's yearbook for headshots for NPCs. I mean, sad day you're carving up their yearbook.
You could,
but-
or you could hand somebody a whole entire yearbook with maybe some information that you know, stay sweet, blah, 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 and then you can add something else in there that's actually important
Right.
on one of the pages, or circle a certain picture,
right.
would be
I haven't even
neat.
thought about that.
There's also old pictures that you can pick up too. Sometimes those are more expensive because they're actually
Yeah.
collectible to.
Or you
some
can just
people.
print those off onto cardstock. That's what I've done for the Dracula dossier. Is I printed some of their pictures off onto cardstock, and then I cut them out, and then they kind of work them a little bit to make them kind of aged, I guess, or worn. So
For my
absolutely.
puzzle clue to make them a little more durable, I printed off just a black and white photo I found that I liked of a family, trimmed it out, and glued it to some cardboard, and then cut it up into pieces.
Right. So I guess what I'm really trying to get at is that most of the prop making stuff is not that hard, and if you just spend some time Googling on Google or searching on YouTube or whatever, there's lots of tutorials on how to do it, and you'd be amazed at how easy it actually is, because we've all learned by trial and error here, by doing it props for either for games or for the haunted house when we had that kind of going on.
Odds are, even if you have never made a prop and you don't know anybody that's in like the costuming industry, gosh, I cannot talk today, industry, in the costuming industry, you probably know someone or have someone in your gaming group who loves cosplay and
Right.
has experience making things for that, and it's very similar. Or maybe you got a drama geek in your group who's used to creating or making makeshift props for plays and things like that. So reach out to those wonderful people in your life.
Right. And if not,
Just tell them to squint.
that'll work too. Or if you
That's where your
just
low ambience lighting comes in.
this prop looks like crap under regular lighting, but if we turn it down, invest in a dimmer switch. So, but there's lots of Facebook groups out there for making all kinds of things, whether it's cosplay or any other kind of prop making stuff. There's forums and everything else. There's loads of people that are out there that are willing to help, especially if you just get on there and tell them what it's for. They're like, oh, that's really cool. That's a cool idea, to do that. And I guarantee you'll find someone that can help you. And even if you have questions, I'd be willing to help. We've made most things that there are to make, I guess. And it's really not that hard. That's the amazing thing, is it's surprising how easy it is if you just do it.
How do you feel about costuming in tabletop RPG?
I think that you're LARPing at that point. And if you showed up to my tabletop game in a costume,
what if you're the GM? What if I want to run a Con X game and I show up in a nice black
Men in Black
suit? Is that too much?
I don't know. I will say this. I saw a thing, pictures at a con. I don't know which convention it was, but there was
I
a
will
guy.
not wear a tie.
There was a guy running a one shot at a con, and he was dressed as I think like a early 1900s person. You know what I mean? Like he had like a fancy Lovecraftian person. He had a tailcoat and a top hat and a cane, almost like the Dexter Drake character from H.P. Lovecraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had the white gloves. And I think in that sense, it adds to the ambiance of it. Now, I'm not sure I would want it at my table every session, I guess. I don't know. But
I'm not
I could
saying,
see,
like as a GM, I've never gone there, but I think I would be okay with sitting down at a table with a GM that was,
right.
dressed for the game.
Well, I think in a convention, it's even better because there's a lot of things going on around you, and it's hard to stay drawn into a game because there's several tables going on and that kind of stuff. And if the game master does a good job, first off, at his running his game, but if he's also there in kind of like in a persona or whatever, I feel like it would draw me in more.
Well, it shows he's excited. Games
absolutely.
are always better when the guy running it is excited about it.
Absolutely.
Well, it shows a certain level of dedication too to the
The premise.
not the premise, but you know what
The
I'm saying?
setting?
Like staying focused at the gaming
right.
table, like eliminating side conversations and out of character
Right.
conversations.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Because nobody wants to cross the guy with the top hat.
That's
Right,
true.
because
That's
he's so totally involved. He dressed up for you, so
yeah.
like you need to show that certain level of dedication.
So, I agree. If you showed up to a game like that and that guy was there in cane and top hat and the whole bit, would you feel more inclined to be, not that you're going to be distracted and unattentive at any other game, but do you feel more drawn into it because you can tell this guy's clearly put in some effort into it?
Yeah.
I think probably initially I would be like, oh my God, look at that guy. But then after that, after
Right.
the initial shock of
Right.
what is happening here, then I would be all about it.
Right on. Right on. Well, I guess I don't know. Do you have anything else to say about props at the table?
No, I don't think so.
try them out, man. Just go ahead and make something and build a game around it. It's a lot of fun to do. You'd be surprised at how inspiring it can be and how it provokes ideas as you build something or as you have something physically in your hands. And the same will be true of your players when they physically have a clue in their hands and are looking at it, reading it, and trying to puzzle it out. It is very cool. So I guess, yeah, if you guys have any questions or curious how to do things, hop on Google and ask. Otherwise, you can drop us a line on the Facebook group, or if you can hit us up on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix, or even email me, James at JustOneMoreFix, if you have questions. I'll do what I can. We've got a fair amount of prop making experience and costume making stuff. Or, like I said, there's people that do better than us. Hit up Google or YouTube. So I guess that'll do it for us. As always, you guys can support us by following us on Twitter. I said before, at JustOneMoreFix. Or if you could really help us out by supporting us and going to wherever it is that you get your podcast from, whether that's Google Play or iTunes or Stitcher or wherever, and give us a rating and a comment there. Then the higher the ratings, it pushes us up further in the list, I guess, however you want to say that, so that we can get exposed to more people. And as always, the best way to get that word out there is to share us with your friends. So let them know that what we're doing here. And other than that, I guess we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can find us at justonemorefix.com and follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.